My wife couldn't have children. But the day she died, she gave birth. The baby in my arms right now shouldn't exist. The coroner told me Claire's body showed zero evidence of pregnancy. No stretched uterus. No hormone changes. Nothing. Yet I found this infant between her legs 3 days ago while my wife bled out in our bed. Dr. Reeves called me 4 times before finally admitting he had no idea what he was looking at. Every test said impossible. The baby's DNA test came back yesterday. She's mine. But here's what kept me up last night staring at her while she slept. Claire had been infertile for 6 years. 4 specialists confirmed it. We'd spent everything trying to have a child. Then 8 months ago, she got sick, and I watched my wife's body destroy itself in ways that still make me nauseous to think about. Her hair fell out in chunks. Her teeth loosened and dropped like baby teeth that forgot to stop. She lost 60 pounds in 3 months. And the whole time, this baby was supposedly growing inside her, except, according to science, she wasn't. I named her Lily, because that's what Claire wanted if we ever had a daughter. That conversation happened 7 years ago in our kitchen, after our 3rd failed IVF attempt. Claire cried and said, maybe we should just accept it wasn't meant to be. Now Lily's 6 months old and I'm terrified. Not because she's difficult. The opposite. She never cries unless something's actually wrong. She sleeps through every night. She started smiling at exactly 6 weeks, like the baby book said she would. She's perfect. Too perfect. My mother-in-law Sophie came to help those first few weeks, and commented on how easy Lily was, how she barely fussed even during diaper changes. Sophie said Claire had been a colicky nightmare for the first year, screaming for hours every evening. But Lily just watches me with these calm, knowing eyes that sometimes make my skin crawl. The thing that made me start keeping notes was the birthmark. Claire had this distinctive birthmark on her left shoulder blade, shaped like a crescent moon. Our dermatologist had offered to remove it years ago, but Claire refused, said it was her signature mark. 3 months ago, while giving Lily a bath, I noticed a pale mark forming on her left shoulder blade. Same location, same crescent shape. I told myself I was seeing patterns that weren't there, that grief was making me paranoid. Then Lily started reaching for things Claire used to love. Claire collected vintage teacups and kept them on a high shelf in our living room. Her favorite was this delicate blue and white porcelain one from her grandmother. When Lily was 4 months old, barely able to hold her head up properly, she'd crane her neck to stare at that shelf. One day, I was holding her near the bookcase, and she'd lurched forward with her tiny hand, reaching specifically for that blue cup. Not the red one next to it, not the yellow one on the end. The blue one Claire used every morning for 8 years. I moved the cups to a closet that night. My best friend Marcus came over last week to check on us. He'd been Claire's friend first, known her since college, and he brought some of her belongings that had been in his garage. Photo albums, old journals, stuff from before we met. While he was there, Lily started fussing, which was unusual. Marcus tried to calm her down, and she screamed. Not baby crying, but full-throated screaming like she was terrified. She'd never done that before with anyone. Marcus looked hurt and handed her back to me. She stopped immediately and stared at him with this cold expression that didn't belong on a baby's face. After Marcus left, I remembered something Claire had told me years ago. Marcus had proposed to her in college. She'd turned him down, said she knew immediately he wasn't the one. They stayed friends, but it had been awkward for years. Why would a 6-month-old react to him like that? The pediatrician says Lily's development is advanced. She started grasping objects earlier than expected. Her eye contact is unusually sustained. At her last appointment, Dr. Walsh commented that Lily seemed to study people's faces like she was trying to figure them out. Most babies that age just look around randomly. Lily tracks people with intent. She watches me constantly, following my movements around the room with her eyes. Sometimes I catch her staring at me with an expression I can't read. Not blank baby staring. Something else. Recognition, maybe. Last month, I started going through Claire's medical records, trying to understand what killed her. The deterioration had been so rapid and brutal. I needed to know what disease could do that. But here's what I found that made my hands shake while reading. 8 months before Claire got sick, she'd gone to a new doctor, a specialist her friend had recommended, Dr. Yuki Ashford. I'd never heard that name before. Claire never mentioned seeing anyone new. I called every medical practice in the state. No Dr. Yuki Ashford exists. I checked Claire's bank statements from that period. 3 payments of $500 to something called Ashford Wellness Center. I searched that name. Nothing. Not online, not in any medical databases I could access. Just those 3 payments, and then Claire got sick. Her decline started exactly 2 weeks after the last payment. Sophie came over yesterday with some of Claire's childhood things she thought I might want for Lily. Old baby clothes, a christening gown, some toys. She was sorting through a box when she froze, pulled out this worn stuffed rabbit and stared at it. She said Claire had been obsessed with this rabbit as a toddler, carried it everywhere, had a complete meltdown if they couldn't find it. Sophie tucked it in Lily's crib as a keepsake. That night, I heard sounds from the nursery on the baby monitor. Not crying, cooing and gurgling, happy sounds. I pulled up the video feed on my phone. Lily was awake, holding that rabbit, pressing its worn ear against her cheek exactly how a child would comfort themselves with a beloved toy. She was 6 months old. Babies that age don't have the motor control for that kind of deliberate, meaningful action. They grab and mouth things randomly. This was intentional, practiced, like she'd done it thousands of times before. I went into her room, and she looked at me without surprise, still clutching that rabbit. I tried to take it away, and she gripped it tighter, her little fingers surprisingly strong. When I finally got it loose, she didn't cry. She just stared at me with what I can only describe as disappointment, the same look Claire used to give me when I did something that let her down. I stopped sleeping, started watching Lily on the monitor for hours. She wakes up most nights around 2 a.m., the exact time Claire used to wake up with insomnia. She doesn't cry or fuss, just lies there awake, staring at the ceiling like she's thinking about something. Sometimes her lips move like she's trying to form words. She's 6 months old. She shouldn't be trying to communicate beyond basic sounds. I recorded it one night, played it back with the volume turned up high. It sounded like she was trying to say my name, not Dada, my actual name, the name Claire called me. I called Dr. Reeves again last week and demanded to see the full autopsy report. He was reluctant, but finally agreed. I sat in his office reading details that made me sick. Claire's organs had been shutting down for months. Her liver was failing. Her kidneys were barely functioning. Her heart showed signs of severe stress. But here's what stood out. Her bone marrow looked wrong. The report said it appeared depleted, like it had been working overtime producing something, but the tests couldn't determine what. Dr. Reeves said he'd never seen anything like it, like her body was being consumed from the inside to create something else, something that required massive amounts of biological resources. The baby. Her body had been building the baby despite being medically incapable of pregnancy. Somehow. Marcus stopped returning my calls after that visit. I texted him asking if everything was okay, and he responded 2 days later with a short message. Said he couldn't be around Lily, that something about her disturbed him deeply. He wouldn't elaborate, just said he needed space and hoped I'd understand. I didn't understand. Marcus had been planning to be Lily's godfather. We joked about it while Claire was sick, trying to maintain hope that things would get better. Now he was cutting us off completely. I went through Claire's phone last night while Lily slept. I'd avoided it for months, couldn't bear to see her messages and photos, but I needed to know about Dr. Ashford. I found emails buried in a folder Claire had labeled Project Hope. The earliest one was from 9 months before she died. A friend of hers, Whitney, had recommended this holistic fertility specialist who supposedly had success where conventional medicine failed. Claire had been desperate enough to try anything. The emails to Dr. Ashford started hopeful. Claire explaining our situation, the failed IVF attempts, the diagnosis of permanent infertility. Dr. Ashford's responses were brief but encouraging. Said she specialized in cases like ours, used alternative methods that modern medicine didn't understand yet, required complete privacy, and couldn't share details until Claire committed to the treatment. Claire committed. The emails showed her getting more excited over weeks. Dr. Ashford never explained the actual treatment, just asked increasingly personal questions. Claire's medical history going back to childhood, her parents' health, her grandparents, details about her personality, her fears, her dreams. One email from Claire mentioned feeling uncomfortable with how personal the questions were getting. Dr. Ashford responded that the treatment required understanding the whole person, not just the body, that creating life was sacred work that demanded complete knowledge. The last email from Dr. Ashford was dated exactly 8 months before Claire died. It said the treatment had been successful. Claire should expect to feel unwell as her body adjusted, that the discomfort was temporary, but the result would be worth it. She should tell no one, especially not her husband, until it was certain. Claire responded asking what she meant by successful, that she hadn't felt different yet. Dr. Ashford never replied. 2 weeks later, Claire started getting sick. I spent hours searching for Whitney, the friend who'd made the recommendation, found her on social media finally. She'd moved to Oregon. I called her number and a man answered. Said Whitney had passed away 14 months ago. Cancer. It came on suddenly and aggressive. She was dead within 6 months. I asked when she'd gotten sick. He thought for a moment. About 18 months ago, right after she'd visited some alternative medicine doctor for fertility treatment. I'm standing in Lily's nursery right now at 3 a.m. She's awake, watching me from her crib. I haven't slept in 2 days. My hands are shaking as I type this on my phone. An hour ago, I was going through more of Claire's things and found a journal she'd hidden in her closet. The entry stopped about a month before she died, when she was too weak to write. But the final entry said something that made my blood freeze. She wrote that she'd made a terrible mistake, that the doctor had lied to her. The treatment wasn't about creating a baby the normal way. It was about transfer. She didn't understand what that meant until it was too late. Her body was breaking down to build something new, not a baby conceived in the normal sense, something else. She wrote that she could feel herself disappearing, like her consciousness was being pulled apart and reformed. She was terrified, but also curious. Would she remember? Would any part of her survive in what came next? The handwriting in that final entry was shaky and hard to read. The last line said, if this worked, she was sorry. She hoped I could forgive her for what she was about to put me through. Lily is staring at me right now with eyes that seem too knowing for a 6-month-old. She started making new sounds this week. Still not words, but closer. Yesterday she made a sound that was almost hey, the same way Claire used to get my attention when I was distracted. I picked her up, and she grabbed my face with both tiny hands, studying me intently. Her eyes are brown like Claire's were. The birthmark on her shoulder is fully formed now, identical to Claire's in every way. I took her to a different pediatrician last week, didn't tell Dr. Walsh. Asked about advanced development and unusual behaviors. The new doctor, Dr. Patel, examined Lily carefully. She said everything seemed normal physically, but agreed Lily's awareness was unusual. She suggested it might just be personality. Some babies are more alert than others. But then she asked me something strange. She wanted to know if there was any family history of reincarnation beliefs. I must have looked confused because she explained that in her culture, they believed souls sometimes returned quickly, especially if they left suddenly. Sometimes they came back through the same family. She'd seen cases where young children remembered details from past lives. Usually it faded by age 5 or 6 as new memories overwrote the old ones. I told her that sounded impossible. She smiled sadly and said most things were impossible until they happened. I'm watching old videos of Claire on my laptop right now. Lily's asleep in my arms. I'm comparing mannerisms, trying to convince myself I'm wrong about this, but Claire had this specific way of scrunching her nose when she was thinking. I've watched it in dozens of videos. Lily did it yesterday while looking at a children's book. Same exact expression. Claire used to tap her fingers in a specific rhythm when she was bored or waiting. 3 quick taps, pause, 2 more taps. It was unconscious, something she didn't even know she did. Last week at a restaurant waiting for food, I looked down at Lily in her high chair. Her tiny fingers were tapping the tray. 3 quick taps, pause, 2 more. Marcus called back finally. Said he needed to tell me something but was afraid I'd think he was crazy. I told him nothing could sound crazy to me right now. He said when he held Lily that day she screamed. He looked into her eyes and saw recognition. Not baby recognition, adult recognition. Like she knew him and was angry with him about something. He said it reminded him of how Claire looked at him at her wedding to me. Angry and disappointed that he'd shown up after initially declining. He'd never told anyone, but he'd skipped the ceremony and only came to the reception. Claire had been furious, even though she tried to hide it. I'm sitting in Claire's old home office right now. Lily's in a playpen beside me, quietly playing with soft blocks. I've been going through Claire's laptop, searching for more information about Dr. Ashford. Found something that made me stop breathing for a full 10 seconds. A folder of PDFs Claire had downloaded about something called somatic cell reincarnation. Fringe science articles from questionable sources. But the theory was there. Under extreme circumstances, with the right biological manipulation, consciousness could be transferred from a dying body into new tissue being formed from that same body's cells. Not a separate baby. A regeneration. I clicked on one article that had been read multiple times. It explained that the original consciousness would need somewhere to anchor during the transfer. The new body would have to be created from the old one's genetic material, but developed in a way that appeared natural enough to avoid suspicion. The process would destroy the original body completely as all its resources went into building the new one. The article was written by someone with no verifiable credentials. It read like science fiction. But Claire had highlighted entire paragraphs. One section discussed how the transferred consciousness would retain most memories but experience them through a developing brain. There would be months or years where the person couldn't articulate what they knew. They'd be trapped in an infant body with an adult mind. The frustration would be intense. Lily just looked at me, not baby-looking. Deliberate eye contact. She dropped the block she was holding and reached toward my face. I leaned down and she touched my cheek with her small hand. So gentle, the way Claire used to. I pulled back and she made a sound. Not crying. Frustrated, like she was trying to tell me something but couldn't form the words. I searched for any record of other women Claire's friend Whitney might have recommended Dr. Ashford to. Found 3 mentions in online fertility forums from years ago. Vague references to an alternative specialist who'd helped when nothing else worked. I tracked down 2 of the women through their email addresses. One never responded. The other, a woman named Patricia, called me back yesterday. Her voice shook when I mentioned Dr. Ashford's name. She said she'd seen the doctor 4 years ago, paid $500 for a treatment she still didn't understand, got pregnant immediately after trying for 8 years, had a healthy baby boy. But Patricia said her son terrified her, the way he looked at people, the way he seemed to understand things he shouldn't. She'd given him up for adoption when he was 11 months old, couldn't handle it anymore. She was crying by the end of the call, said she knew it made her a terrible mother, but something wasn't right about that child. He felt wrong. I'm watching Lily sleep right now through the monitor. She's 9 months old today. Started pulling herself up on furniture last week. Dr. Walsh says she's ahead of schedule developmentally. What he doesn't know is that yesterday I watched her try to open a cabinet using the child lock mechanism. Not random baby grabbing. She was deliberately trying to press the release button. She got frustrated when it wouldn't open and looked at me like she expected me to help. The look wasn't helpless, baby. It was annoyed adult. Like she knew how it should work, but her hands weren't coordinating properly yet. I installed cameras in every room of the house last month. Not for security, to watch Lily. I needed to know what she did when I wasn't looking. The footage has been disturbing. She doesn't play the way babies play. She examines things methodically, picks up objects and studies them, turning them over in her hands like she's trying to remember something. She spends long periods just sitting and looking around the room, her eyes moving systematically from one item to another. When she sees photos of Claire, she stops and stares. Not the way babies are distracted by faces. The way you'd look at a photo of yourself from years ago. Recognition mixed with something else. Sadness, maybe. Sophie came by yesterday with more of Claire's things. Found a box of jewelry in her storage unit. Said I should save it for Lily when she's older. There was a necklace in the box. Simple silver chain with a small pendant. Claire wore it every day for the first 5 years I knew her. Then one day she just stopped, and I never saw it again. Sophie pulled it out, and Lily lunged forward from my arms, reaching for it with both hands. Not the way babies grab at shiny things. With purpose. With need. She got hold of it, and immediately brought it to her mouth, but not to chew. She was holding it against her lips like she was kissing it. The same gesture Claire used to do unconsciously when she was stressed. I took it away, and Lily looked at me with such clear betrayal that I almost gave it back. I started sleeping in Lily's room on an air mattress. Told myself it was because I wanted to be close if she needed anything at night. Truth is, I can't stop watching her, making sure she's still just a baby. Last night around 2 a.m. I woke to movement sounds. Opened my eyes to see Lily standing in her crib, hands gripping the rail, staring down at me. She wasn't crying or fussing, just watching me sleep. When she realized I was awake, she didn't startle or get excited. She just maintained eye contact. We stared at each other for maybe 30 seconds before she slowly sat back down and lay back like nothing had happened. I drove to the address where Claire's bank statement said those payments went. The Ashford Wellness Center. It was an office building in a medical complex across town. Suite 237. I took Lily with me, not sure what I was looking for. The suite number existed, but it was empty. Completely bare. Not recently vacated, but stripped. No furniture, no equipment, no sign anyone had ever used it. The building manager said Suite 237 had been vacant for 3 years. No one named Ashford had ever rented it. I showed him Claire's bank statements. He studied them and frowned. Said the payments were definitely made to an account associated with this address, but he had no record of any tenant. It shouldn't have been possible. Lily started fussing in my arms, and I noticed she was staring at one specific wall. There was nothing on it, just blank white paint, but she wouldn't look away. I walked closer, and she reached out her hand, touching the wall. In that moment, I swear I felt something. A coldness, a presence. Lily made a sound I'd never heard before. Not a cry or a babble. Something that sounded almost like a sigh. Content, like she'd found what she was looking for. I left immediately and didn't look back. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The empty office. Lily's reaction. The impossible payments. I called Dr. Reeves again and asked if there was any way to test for something in Lily's DNA that shouldn't be there. Something that would show she wasn't naturally conceived. He was quiet for a long time before saying tests like that existed but weren't standard. He'd need a good reason to run them. I told him I suspected some kind of genetic manipulation. He asked if Lily showed any health problems or abnormalities. I said no, she was perfectly healthy. Too healthy, maybe. He said there was nothing to test for then. Genetic manipulation that's successful would be indistinguishable from natural variation. Whatever had been done, if anything had been done, it was beyond our ability to detect. Marcus sent me a text today. Just one line. Have you noticed her eyes? I knew what he meant. Lily's eyes had been dark brown since birth, like Claire's, but over the past few weeks, the brown has been developing these small flecks of green in the iris. Not typical color change that sometimes happens with babies. These were specific spots, scattered in a pattern. I pulled up old photos of Claire from 2 years before she died. The similarity made my stomach turn. Claire's eyes had developed these same green flecks about 6 months before she got sick. Our eye doctor at the time said it was just normal aging changes, but now I'm looking at them again, and they're not random. They're in almost identical positions in Lily's eyes. I found something today that made me lock myself in the bathroom and cry for 20 minutes. I was going through more of Claire's hidden journals and found a letter she'd written but never sent. It was addressed to me, dated 3 days before she died, when she could barely hold a pen. The handwriting was shaky but legible. She wrote that she was sorry for lying to me, sorry for seeking treatment without telling me, but she'd been so desperate to give us a child that when Dr. Ashford explained there was a way, she didn't ask enough questions. She didn't understand what the treatment actually meant until her body started breaking down. By then, it was too late to stop. The doctor had told her the transfer process was irreversible once initiated. Claire wrote that part of her was curious whether it would work, whether consciousness could actually survive the death of one body and continue in another. She said if it did work, if she woke up in a new body, she'd try to show me signs. Small things I'd recognize. She'd try to come back to me in the only way she could. The letter ended with 3 words. Watch for me. I'm standing in Lily's room right now. She's 10 months old, started taking her first steps yesterday. She walked across the room with barely any wobbling, like she already knew how, like muscle memory was carrying her. When she reached me, she looked up and smiled. It was Claire's smile, the exact expression Claire made when she was proud of herself for accomplishing something. Same tilt of the head, same little crinkle around the eyes. I picked her up, and she wrapped her arms around my neck, pressing her face against my shoulder. The exact way Claire used to hug me when she needed comfort. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with this information, this suspicion, this growing certainty. If I'm right, if Claire somehow transferred her consciousness into this baby during her death, what does that mean? Is Lily my daughter or my wife? Both? Neither? She has Claire's DNA. She's made from Claire's body. But she's also a separate person developing her own personality. Except the personality is becoming more like Claire's every day. I started keeping a list of similarities. The list is now 3 pages long. The way she sleeps on her left side with one hand under the pillow. Claire's position. The way she gets frustrated and makes this specific huffing sound. Same sound Claire made. The way she organizes her toys in a row before playing. Claire organized everything in rows. Dr. Walsh called me in for a meeting yesterday. Said he had concerns about Lily's development. Not medical concerns, but behavioral ones. He'd noticed during her last checkup that Lily seemed too aware, too focused. She made eye contact that was unusual for her age and seemed to respond to conversations she shouldn't understand. He asked if I'd noticed anything strange at home. I lied. Said she seemed like a normal baby to me. He didn't look convinced but couldn't point to anything specifically wrong. Said to keep monitoring her and bring her back if anything concerning developed. The thing is, nothing concerning is developing. Lily isn't sick. She's not in pain. She's not dangerous. She's just becoming more herself. More like Claire. Last week she started making a specific sound when she wanted my attention. Not mama or dada. Something that sounded close to, hey babe. That's what Claire called me. Always. For 8 years, I was babe to her. Now Lily makes that sound and I turn automatically, responding the way I used to respond to Claire. She knows it works. She uses it deliberately. I tested it. Ignored her one time when she made the sound. She got louder, more insistent, finally adding what sounded like my actual name. Not the baby version. Close enough to the real thing that I couldn't deny what I was hearing. I'm watching old videos of Claire teaching herself guitar 3 years ago. She was terrible at it, all thumbs, but determined. Used to practice every evening for months before giving up. Lily's sitting next to me on the couch. The video shows Claire struggling with a chord change, getting frustrated, making that huffing sound. Lily made the same sound. I looked at her, and she was staring at the screen with intense focus. Not the way babies watch TV, the way someone watches a video of themselves and remembers. She reached toward the screen when Claire's face appeared, touched the laptop screen gently, then looked at me and back at the screen, comparing. I think she's trying to tell me she understands, that she knows what this looks like, that she remembers being that person in the video. Sophie called today asking if she could take Lily for the weekend. Said she missed having a baby in the house and wanted grandmother time. I made an excuse. Said Lily had a cold. Truth is, I can't let her go. Not because I'm afraid something will happen, because I'm afraid of what Lily might do or say. What if her developing verbal skills start forming words Sophie recognizes as Claire's? What if she shows knowledge of things only Claire would know? I can't risk it. I need more time to understand this before anyone else figures it out. I found more information about somatic cell reincarnation buried in fringe science forums. One thread from 8 years ago discussed a researcher who'd been experimenting with consciousness transfer using stem cells. The researcher's name was Ashford, Dr. Y. Ashford. The thread said the research had been shut down after ethical violations. Human experimentation without consent. The researcher disappeared after the investigation. Went underground. Some posts speculated Ashford continued the work privately, seeking desperate subjects who'd pay anything and wouldn't report complications. The description matched everything. Claire had been desperate. Dr. Ashford had found her somehow. Offered a solution that seemed impossible but worked. The transfer had succeeded. Claire's consciousness had moved into the new body being built from her dying cells. But here's what the forum thread mentioned that made my hands shake. The transferred consciousness would be confused initially, trapped in a developing brain that couldn't process adult thoughts. The first year would be disorienting, but as the brain matured, more memories would surface. By age 2 or 3, the person would start remembering their previous life clearly. By age 5, they'd be fully aware of who they used to be. The thread warned that children created this way often had severe psychological problems. They'd remember being adults, remember relationships, responsibilities, entire lives, but be trapped in child bodies, unable to articulate what they knew. Lily's 11 months old now. She said her first word yesterday. It wasn't mama or dada. It was a clear, distinct babe. She was looking right at me when she said it. I pretended not to hear, acted like it was just random babbling, but she said it again, louder, more insistent. When I finally made eye contact with her, she smiled. That same satisfied smile Claire got when she won an argument. Like she'd proved her point. I'm terrified of what happens next. Every day she gets more coordinated, more verbal, more clearly herself, or more clearly Claire. The line between them is dissolving. I started researching child development specialists who might help. But how do I explain this? My daughter is actually my dead wife's consciousness in a new body? They'd think I was insane. Maybe I am insane. Maybe grief has broken my brain, and I'm seeing patterns that aren't there, projecting my dead wife onto my innocent daughter. Except the evidence keeps mounting. The birthmark, the mannerisms, the recognition, the knowledge she shouldn't have. I bought a voice recorder yesterday. Started documenting everything. Lily's words, her behaviors, her reactions, building a record of what's happening. Maybe someday I'll need to show someone. Or maybe I'm just creating evidence of my own breakdown. She's standing in her crib right now watching me type this. It's 4 a.m. She woke up and didn't cry. Just stood there waiting for me to notice. When I looked over, she was staring at me with an expression I can't describe. Patient. Understanding. Like she knows I'm struggling with this. Like she's waiting for me to accept what's happened. I asked her a question. Just whispered it. Claire? She didn't respond with words, but her face changed. Something shifted in her expression. Recognition? Confirmation. She reached through the crib bars toward me. Not the way babies reach for comfort. The way you'd reach for someone you love and miss desperately. I stood up and walked to her crib. Looked down at this 11-month-old baby with my dead wife's eyes. She touched my face with her small hand. Traced my cheekbone. The same gesture Claire used to do when she wanted to comfort me. I picked her up, and she buried her face in my neck. Made a sound that was almost like relief. Like she'd been waiting months for me to understand. For me to see her. We're sitting in the rocking chair now. She's almost asleep in my arms. Tomorrow she'll wake up, and we'll continue this strange existence. Me raising my wife's consciousness in our daughter's body. Both of them existing in the same space. The same person, but different. I don't know what happens as she gets older. When she can talk more. When she can explain what she remembers. I'm not sure I want to know. But right now, in the dark, holding this impossible child, I whisper the only thing that makes sense. I see you. I know it's you. And I don't know what to do. She shifts in my arms and makes that sound again. Babe. Clear as anything. Then she's asleep. And I'm left holding the most horrifying, beautiful miracle I never asked for. My wife couldn't have children. But the day she died, she gave birth. To herself. And I'm going to have to figure out how to live with that. Thanks for hanging out till the end. If you want more stories, make sure to subscribe and leave your take below.